Hey friends, we are excited to share with you today an interview that we just did with a new friend of ours. Her name is Karen Estep. She has a podcast called Stand, Kneel, Now What? Because she converted to Catholicism, came home to the church a few years ago, and now she likes to share all of her faith blunders and her love for Catholicism in a very real and inviting and legit way. And so we had her on to talk about Easter and to talk about her testimony. So she's sharing all of that with us today. And we are launching something as well this week. Ooh. Behold.
Behold.
Seemed very scriptural.
It did. Yeah.
We would like to go to the Midwest Catholic Family Conference this year, and we need help getting there because we are a baby business and it is an investment for us to buy a booth and get to meet all these lovely people. It's very expensive, but it is so worth
good
because there are amazing vendors and amazing people and an amazing opportunity for us to network and meet new people and bring them to the podcast. So we have created essentially our first podcast merch line, plus one. And we wanted to share the designs with you, get your feedback on them, and support our little journey here to the Midwest Catholic Family Conference in early August. So we have this first one, Take a Chill Pill, and Trust. This one was a prophetic word my mom spoke over me recently.
It was very funny.
And then it applied to Haley, and I was like, maybe everyone needs to take a chill pill and trust. Next is Unhinged. If you are familiar with us, you know that we have a like every fourth episode, it feels like, is an unhinged episode. So this is the Tumblr for that. It features a little unhinged gate. Look how cute that is. Next is probably the thing we say most on the podcast. Otherwise, we are overtired, we are over-caffeinated, but we're still surrendering. And it has our cute little sunburst on it right there. Oh, so lovely.
This one is not really podcast merch, but I thought it was really pretty. It's got a bunch of roses on it, and it's got a nice little quote from Saint Therese of Lisieux, which just fit in very nicely with our goal here at Holy Surrender.
Which is help you that understanding that holiness is just little steps in progress and understanding the Lord's heart and being open to receive that and wholly surrendering it all. So you can buy these on our website. We'll leave the link below. Please support our way to the Midwest Catholic Family Conference if you feel so called to do so.
The first 10 orders, I don't think... Let us know if you're buying for a man, because he won't want this. But, ladies, the first 10 ladies that order this will get the Homemaker's Litany that I got from Tan Books. So,
yes, just as a little
thank you.
Little thank you from us to you. Yes, these will be on our website, and we're really excited about these. We've been sitting on these designs for a while. So, go check them out. It's going to be great.
It will be. Yep. So. We'll send you lots of pictures from the Midwest Catholic Family Conference.
Absolutely. And so without further ado, please enjoy this interview with our friend Karen. Today we are joining a new friend of ours who is the host of the Stand, Kneel, Now What podcast and just came home to the Catholic faith as an adult. She hopes to share her love of the church on a daily basis. Karen has been shown many graces through the sacraments, even through all of her blunders, and she hopes to help other adults navigate their faith journey as well. And I am so excited about this because I think more people need to feel like people are being honest about their faith journey and authentic about their faith journey. Yes. And so we're really thankful to have you on and that you're sharing your gifts with us. And if you would just, for our listeners who may or may not know you from your podcast, will you tell us about your testimony? How'd you end up Catholic and what inspired you to start your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So my testimony is I was baptized when I was, 2 months old in a tiny Lutheran church in Kentucky that my grandparents weren't even members of. They couldn't baptize me at the church that they were members at because they were doing something for Christmas. So I like to joke with people that I've probably never actually set foot in the church that I was baptized in because I was a baby. But I wasn't really raised Lutheran because my dad knew that it was important to get me baptized, but he kind of fell away from the Lutheran church. And so I would only really go to Lutheran churches when my grandparents would visit us. And I also went to Catholic Mass because my cousins were Catholic. And so I'd probably been to as many Lutheran services as I had been Catholic Masses when I was younger. And then when I was in second grade, I met my best friend, and we're still best friends. So we're on our like 30-year anniversary of being friends.
I love that.
Yeah. And I would love to say that like I was really nice to her at first, but I was not. I actually made fun of her, and that's how we met on the playground. She had just moved to the elementary school area where we went to elementary school 2 weeks before school ended, and she was wearing the most hideous outfit I have ever seen anybody wear. It was like white socks, but with a brown pleated like uniform skirt, and then a butter yellow polo. And it was ugly. It had to have been designed by a man. Like, that's the only way. Anyway, so I went up to her on the playground and I said, I just feel like somebody should tell you that your outfit's really ugly. And she quipped back that it was like for a club that her parents, her parents were pastors of a church, and this was part of one of the clubs that she was a part of. And did I want to come to VBS with her? So I said yes. So I went home and told my parents that I had been invited to Vacation Bible School. I didn't even know what Vacation Bible School was, but I had been invited, and they looked up the church and they said, "Sure, you can go." And the church that I actually grew up in from then on was the Salvation Army. At VBS, we had a leader who you could just see Jesus in his face. I just knew as a second grader, I wanted what he had, and I wanted to be a Christian from then on. So that was really when I chose Jesus for myself. And so from then on, like my parents came to the Salvation Army and my grandparents came to the Salvation Army. And that is really how I grew up. My dad still calls them the Marching Methodists because the Salvation Army was founded by a Methodist pastor, but we have a marching band. So, and my dad still goes to services every once in a while, well, pretty regularly. And then, but the Salvation Army, where my husband and I live, just didn't have a really good, solid young adult feeling after we had gotten married. So we had decided that we would just join a Methodist church. And then we had kids, and we had to send the kids somewhere for preschool. And the only school in our area that taught Spanish with an actual teacher in the classroom. And I'm really big on my kids learning a second language because I used to teach kids where English was their second language. So I knew that I wanted my kids to learn Spanish, and I had tried teaching them Spanish and they hated it. Like they cried and cried and cried. Anyway, so the only school in our area that had an in-person teacher was the Catholic school. And so we were sending our kids to Catholic school, but we were still going to the Methodist church. And we knew that the Methodist church was not a good fit. So we decided to take a break from going to any church services. And then COVID hit. And so no one was in session. So we couldn't even church shop the way we wanted. And then I remember walking downstairs and telling my husband, like, I miss being in a community. I grew up in a church community. Want my kids to grow up in a church community. We're sending our kids to Catholic school. What do you think about going to Mass? And he said, well, do Catholics drink coffee and eat bacon? And I said, you know what? I'm pretty sure they do. And he said, well, that's all I'm really looking for. So why not? So
I don't think I could live without coffee or bacon. So,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Yeah. So we went to our first Catholic Mass the August of 2021. And unbeknownst to each other, we had prayed before we walked in if God wanted us to be Catholic, to make it abundantly clear. And he definitely did that day, and we haven't stopped going. So we joined RCIA the following October and then came in at the Easter Vigil in 2022. And it is the best decision of our lives. My husband will tell you that as well. We absolutely love the community that we are a part of. We love being Catholic. Um, it is a journey. And it's one I wake up and choose every day. And there are days that I'm really tired and don't want to do it anymore. But I'm still here and I plan on dying Catholic. So
I love that though. I think that's so important. I think doesn't matter what denomination you are, but as a Christian, you have to choose God every day. And
Mhm.
as he's leading you on your faith journey, whether you're trying to figure out where he's calling you, or you were born and raised Catholic, or you converted to Catholic, whatever, like you have to choose him every day. You could still walk off the cliff and go end up somewhere in deep sin or in a totally random community or a cult. It doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
it's important that you are making that choice. So I think it's a very cool testimony overall to like the fact that you guys didn't converse about it and God was just like, this is where you were gonna land and this is where I want you. Gave me goosebumps, but also just like the fact that you are like, I'm willingly going to choose him every day and I will be here and I will be Catholic. Just like is a very powerful statement to people who are like, I am forever doomed to wander, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think there's those Christians that are like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I love that a lot. And we were talking before we started recording about how I was listening to your Things I Miss About Protestantism episode, which is a good episode, and you guys should go listen to it for sure. This is our Easter Monday episode. What were some things about Easter as a Catholic that were different or like that just really resonated with you?
Um, well, so Palm Sunday is actually my favorite Sunday, and it always has been. What I always forget, though, is in the Catholic Church, the gospel reading is so long
Yeah.
because when you're a Protestant, the gospel is typically just Palm Sunday. Like it's just when he, like the triumphal entry, that's it. Like that's where you end it. It's not the entire passion. And so I always, I'm always like, oh yes, it's Palm Sunday and we get palms and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I'm horrible at responsorial things because I'm a really high reader, but then I get really frustrated when I mess up one of the lines and then I'm off and everybody's ahead of me. And so um that didn't really answer your question. Okay, so what do I love about Easter in the Catholic?
Hey, Palm Sunday, to me, it's one big
Yeah.
job, right? Like it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
whole experience from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. So like I can imagine going from like this big of a Bible passage to like
yeah.
the whole shebang is like, okay, I have children and I'm standing
Yes.
here.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was just getting ready to say that. Like, I think Palm Sunday might be my least favorite, only because my children are given what turns into weapons
Oh
at
yeah, yeah, yeah.
church.
No, I have to tell my husband not to hit the children with the
So he's your extra kid.
Yeah, he's as bad as the kids. I think though, what I really, really love about Palm Sunday into Easter Sunday is that the Catholic Church is so sensory oriented. Like everything is tactile. Like you can touch the palms and you can smell the incense and you can hear because we tend to chant more during this Lent and into Easter. And that's very like it's like all five senses are heightened and you become really aware of that you are created by God and that God gave you these five senses to experience worship, to be a part of the worship. And that's something that you don't necessarily get in the Protestant church. Like one of the things I remember researching when we first came in is what sacraments or what sacramentals could I partake in? And, you know, getting holy water at the beginning of Mass and when you leave, as long as you're a baptized Christian, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to take that sacramental. And that's one of the most beautiful parts for me for the Catholic worship service is that it's so just everything is like you're hearing things and you're smelling things and you're seeing things and it's just surrounding, like worship surrounds you. And especially during that Palm Sunday to Easter, especially the Easter Vigil, and that's forever long too.
It is, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good I being a cradle Catholic, like my scope is, Catholicism, but I can say that there was a distinct moment where I chose to experience the Triduum versus just like chug through the Triduum
Yeah. Yeah.
and let the Lord actually into my space. But you're right. Like there's something about like the reverend. I hear that a lot from like Protestant friends as well as like they don't connect with mass, but they're also not like connecting with the reverence of like the incense and the holy water. Like it is supposed to set the environment to focus solely on God and to solely have this intimate union with him for like an hour, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I love, Karen, that you called it a worship service because that's what it is. I teach middle school PSR, and Mass is by far their least favorite night of the month. And we had a chat about that and how we don't go to Mass to receive. Like we do, and that's beautiful, but we are there to worship. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is from our Catholics that are just like, well, this church over here has really great music, or their sermon really spoke to me, and I receive, I fill my cup when I go to these services. But that's not what our Mass is for. It is for worship. And I think that's a vital difference.
Mhm. Exactly. In fact, when I helped take some of the teenagers at our parish to the Steubenville conference that we go to, the first night is very much like a Protestant praise service. And I remember just looking at some of the other adults, and there's another adult that chaperones that is also a convert. And I just remember telling him, like, if this is what the rest of the weekend is, I'm out. Like, I converted for a reason. This is not worship. This is the worship I left, and I don't want to go backwards. And he was like, no, 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 just give adoration a chance. So, it was, but it's very like it's funny that you say like your Protestant friends or your Catholics that are slightly fallen away, like the Protestant services. And I have gone back to support some friends whose kids were being dedicated or being baptized, or even that Steubenville that first night. And I was like, this isn't it. Like that's not where I want to be anymore.
Yes, I went to a Brandon Lake concert in October and like he was like, "This is church." And I was like, "You're missing one thing, buddy. One big thing. Body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus." I was like, "You
The
know what would
thing. You're
make
missing
this?
the
Yeah,
thing.
the
Yeah.
thing." I was like, "You know what would make this concert for me? If there was a Eucharist right there. Like if I could see Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, I'd be like, this would have been the best concert of my life." But like, you don't know what you're missing out on, man.
Yeah.
But you know, that's not that's not my soapbox to stand on. But you're right. I think there's like such a draw to um kind of not like the free form isn't the right word, but like you can like you said, you receive when you go to a service like that. It's focused on like what you can get out of it, not focused on like what God is doing in that moment, what you can worship and thank him and praise him for, what you more like you can take everything you're experiencing to mass and just lay it all out there and glorify him for it. It's like my favorite Philippians 4 is one of my favorite little chapters where it talks about how like with praise and thanksgiving take everything to God. And I feel like mass does that where you're praising and you're thanking him, and that is just your moment to be in awe and wonder of him. And Easter is like prime time for that. Like our Easter vigil, candlelight, and then once we hit that point where we're shifting out of like Jesus in the grave to like Easter, we have brass playing, people are flooding the altar with lilies, there's incense, it's like all being remade and being brought out of the grave. And I'm just like, you just can't get that anywhere else, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. What were some things that you felt like were foreign or weird they took getting used to? And how did the Lord like renew your mind on that?
As far as like Catholic theology, um, purgatory was something that I really wrestled with. And what's funny is when we were first going through it, going through the, it's now OCIA. I still call it RCIA. There's even a shirt that says I still call it RCIA that I've thought about getting. Um, I kind of accepted it then. And between now or then and recently, we have had some family members pass away, and I never really thought about it. But my aunt passed away, and I was really close to my aunt the day after Christmas. And for some reason, her passing and knowing that she was baptized, and knowing though that there were some aspects of her life that didn't flow with, she was kind of pro-choice. She was, but she helped the homeless and she did this. And I really struggled with that idea of purgatory. And I was telling this to a couple of friends, and one was Catholic and one was a convert. And the Catholic one was like, "Oh, I just love the idea of purgatory. I love that that's there for us, and that's our, we get to go there before we enter heaven so that we are completely ready for heaven." And I said, I'm not questioning if it's true. I just question, like, is my aunt there, and how will I know when she's out of there? And so the convert kind of took me aside. It was the same convert that I had to talk to in Steubenville that talked me down then too. But he kind of took me aside and he was like, "Yeah, I understand why you struggle with this, because it's, when you grow up in a Protestant church, it's just you either go to heaven or hell. Like there is no purgatory for people that have been baptized and saved." And um so yeah, so that was one that it's kind of like I understood it a lot when I didn't have a family member that I thought would be in purgatory, and then when I did have a family member that, could be in purgatory, it just hit me in a different way. And it's funny how like those little tugs kind of hit you differently. Like I understood Mary very well, and I always kind of understood Mary and like the importance of her. Even when I was a Protestant, I didn't think that Protestants gave her enough honor. Um, but yeah, that one's been one that I've struggled with a lot lately.
I feel like I end up explaining that a lot, like the
Yeah.
concept of
Yes.
purgatory. Yeah.
There's have you heard of the St. Gertrude prayer?
No.
Okay, you're gonna love this then, because I go through waves where I like feel really called to pray for the souls in purgatory, and like right now I'm kind of in a dry spell. Maybe because I've been doing it so much lately, but I really got my PSR students on board, and we say the St. Gertrude prayer every week at class. And I don't, Jill, maybe you know, was it a pope that said, um, basically when you say the prayer, you release 1,000 souls from purgatory.
Yeah,
And
Oh,
so,
that was his promise in this personal
yes,
revelation, was that the prayer
that was his
releases
personal.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, to St. Gertrude, duh. Sorry,
Yes.
long day. Um, but yeah, so I
The
got
Pope would have
my
approved it.
students. So yeah, we say on a full class, I've got about 20 to 25 kids in my class, and we all say it. So
well,
like
that's
we're building
cool.
an army.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. I'll for sure pray that, because yeah, that was like the biggest thing. And I think there are just different things that hit me at different times that are just different. Um,
Mhm.
when I was in RCIA, and I've talked about this on my podcast, and I think I even wrote an article for Catholic Mom about this. I was going to quit. And so I teach one section of freshman theology as well. And I've told them this story a couple of times. Um, I was overly confident, and this is a pride thing. I didn't want people to know that I was converting to Catholicism. And so I would pride myself on the fact that I would know the responses and I would know what the liturgy was. And but no one told me that the liturgy starts over at Advent. And so the first Sunday of Advent, 2021, no one told me what was going on. And I literally had a panic attack. And I remember being like standing up when, the priest starts and the music starts. and I went into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so, and I remember talking myself down in the pew, and I was like, okay, who am I going to fight? My 72-year-old priest? Like what? And I would be stopped because we used to sit in the way far back. Like someone would stop me before I got up to the altar. Like, so I went, okay, check. I cannot fight my priest. Okay, I can't flee because my husband has my two small children. Like that's not an option for me. And so I froze. And I remember having to like physically physically sit myself down in the pew when everybody else sat down. And we got in the car after mass and I told my husband, I said, I can't do it. Like they changed stuff on me and no one told me. And so my sponsor sat me down at their house and they were talking to my husband and I because my husband and I had a husband and wife as our sponsors too. So that was kind of nice to have a couple sponsor us as a couple. And he just goes, "Have you heard of Eucharistic miracles?" I went, "Absolutely not. Like, what are you talking about?" And so he was telling me all these like Eucharistic miracles and like how they're all tied together. And that's what brought me back in. But I was ready to like pack it up and be like, Catholicism's way too freaking hard and I'm done.
I think that's so fascinating because I have friends who I talk to who are like, nope, what you have is just like too deep, it's too much. I'm
Mhm.
comfy, I feel safe here. And then I'm over here like, I'll never know enough, and that's awesome. That means I can keep learning, I can keep growing, and I can keep knowing. And all these like, even as someone who has known purgatory her whole life, or who has known like, oh, we cycle through the liturgy, the Lord is still renewing my mind, and He still astounds me that like I'll sit down in the pew and listen to the readings and be like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed this week. This will carry me through. And like, it's not like they picked it out randomly, right? Like it's the same ABC cycle, but I was just, it hits different because he's driving that force. And I think that you have to be, like you said, you have to choose to let God renew your mind, and you have to choose to let God into those spaces that feel complicated or too much. And I love the Eucharistic miracles too. I'm just like, there is nobody but God that can put together pieces like this. Okay, you can't just like match the blood type from the Shroud of Turin with all with all of the Eucharistic miracles, and oh, it's from the left ventricle of the heart that pumps blood to the whole body. There's an endless supply of God being like, don't worry about it, I'm right here. I want you to be consumed by me and to consume you. But don't worry about it. You'll
Yeah.
get there. He's so kind and merciful to be like, I'm just going to leave you these hints.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm astounded by him constantly.
Oh, for
So,
sure. For sure.
yes. Um, so as most people know, 40 days of Lent, 50 days of Easter,
Mhm.
as we kind of have in our little notes here. What are your tips to make the most of the Easter season? How can people really just lean into the Lord and what He's doing in their hearts?
Um, One of my favorite quotes from, I can never say it correctly, Saint Pope John Paul II, is that
Pope Saint.
is it
Yeah,
Pope Saint
I
Saint
think it's
Pope?
Pope Saint.
I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think it's Pope Saint John Paul II. Is that we are an Easter people. And I think to lean on the Lord, and we were talking about this before. It has been a hard Lent for me. And part of that is my fault. I over plan and underperform constantly, especially because I had all these ideas of what this Lent will look like and what I was going to give up. And I have kept up with one Lenten promise, one out of I think I made five or six. And I don't give up chocolate anymore because that's just a waste of my time because I know I'm going to break that one for sure. Um, but I think to really lean in the Lord is just, we all have times in our faith journey where it's dry and I was just reading today about a saint Padre Pio, who experienced a dryness and experienced this fear that God was no longer with him. And that really hit me today because, we're in the desert for 40 days. Like that's literally what this Lent has felt like for me, is that I have felt um very deserty. And but Easter is the time of hope and renewal and knowing that God keeps his promises. In fact, I went to mass today and the homily was so good, and so it just exactly what I needed. I've heard this before. I've actually taught a Bible study on the covenant that God made with Abraham and Sarah. And our priest was telling us, he made the covenant with Abraham and Sarah, but what most people don't know, I can't remember if he said 25 or 30, but it was he made the covenant and then Sarah got pregnant 30 years later. And so, and, in our heads, we think, okay, so God makes these covenants and then immediately we should see the effects, right? Like immediately we should get the miracles that he is bringing. And that's not like his time is more perfect than ours. And it took 30 years. It was 30 years after. And we have to be the ones that wait and create patience and create this space for the Lord to come in. And I think that's what Lent into Easter is that 40 days of where we feel like we can't go on any farther. So we lean into the Lord and we let him carry us. And then we get to Easter and there's hope and joy. And we know that he'll keep his promises because he did. And he will.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That actually really resonates with part of my Lenty Lent, which hopefully I'll share on a podcast later because I'm in my what feels like 30 years of waiting for him to resolve this thing he said he was gonna do. But I'm like, I won't know until Easter because that's how this is. And I really struggled with what to give up this year because like for 2 years I did social media and I did like refined sugars. Like I fully committed, but I knew I was struggling with a sin of gluttony. And that was something that had a hold over my life. And I was like, Lent is a great time to break that and let him transform me. And that's something my husband's very adamant about. He's like, no, if you're going to do something for Lent, you should be able to, like, it should be something that essentially breaks a compulsion that you can sustain. And I'm like, well, there goes the chocolate because it seems like a waste of time now. So this year I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm just going to surrender it and you do what you want. And it's always, I mean this in the most loving way to him. It's always the worst Lent when I let him have his way. And so like we say all the time on the podcast, we're like, on the other side of Good Friday is Easter Sunday. Even if you feel dead in the grave, even if it's like a week after Easter and you're like, okay, I still don't feel better. Like it's coming and the Lord is bringing that season. And to think of like, we are an Easter people, that quote of like, carry that for 50 days. Okay. Enjoy your treats, get together and celebrate the Lord, prepare for Pentecost, that outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Easter is a time I think that we get caught in the culture that's like, Easter is Easter and then we're done.
Yeah.
Woohoo,
sure.
one day. But I mean, we just spent, like you said, 40 days in the desert, which is actually what we wrote our Lenten journal on. It's called In the Desert because that's how I feel every Lent. I'm like, it's going to be a desert. I can see it. And we're coming out of that desert and we're preparing to start our ministry, our outpouring of the Holy Spirit for the rest of the year. And so like take advantage of the 50 days of Easter and always like focus on what God wants to do in those 50 days and just embrace his heart for the season. And don't be afraid to give that gift of God's resurrection to others in Easter.
I love that. The gift of God's resurrection.
Yeah. I think we forget that, like, we're so busy throwing parties and celebrating that part of Jesus rising from the dead was the experience of him after he rose, after this horrible tragedy, after these terrible things that they saw. He came back and he was like, I know I just saw you a couple of days ago and you hated me, but I'm still here and I still love you.
Yeah.
I think people need to know that. So,
Yeah.
yes. Well, can you tell us where we can find you, where people can find you on social media, where they can find your podcast
Yeah.
and all that?
So my podcast is called Stand Kneel Now What, which is basically just my way of like not knowing what to do all the time at Mass. And then so the podcast can be found on Apple, YouTube, a couple of other platforms, and Spotify. And the social media for the podcast is on Instagram. It's really long, so it's going to take me a minute. It's at stand underscore Neil underscore now underscore what. I always giggle when I do that. I'm like, why did I do that to myself? I guess I didn't like say it out loud before I picked the name. And then on Facebook, it is Stand Neil Now What with a question mark podcast. And I play fun games on my podcast. I end all my podcasts with a game called Odd One Out, where people get to vote. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of a way to bring the community together, and you get to pick which one you think the odd one out is. And you can vote on that on the Facebook page, or Spotify has a poll option, or Instagram. And then I also write for CatholicMom.com, and you can find my work there. I am a contributing author for Living Faith Kids, which is like a little missal for kiddos when they go with there's a few daily readings that are in it, and then there's reflections, and they're really cute. Sometimes there's stories, or sometimes it's just, explaining the gospel, but in more kid-friendly terms. And then where else can I be found? I think that's it for right now. I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping to eventually get into more spaces, but I think that's it for right now.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know about the last one, so I'll have to check that out because that
Oh
sounds
yeah.
really,
It's a
really
great little, and it comes out quarterly, and it's just, they're really cute, and they've got really fun interactive pictures, and they've got a priest on staff that does, like, he explains things in kid-friendly terms, and then there's games the kids can play too in their little quarterly missal. It's really cute.
Man, I love all the things that are coming out that help our kids
Yeah,
like
yeah, for
really
sure.
embrace the faith. So that's awesome. We will add all those links below, and we'll share those so that people can find you. I think that your podcast is incredibly helpful for people who are either just like friends of Catholics or who have, I was like, man, I should send these to all my friends. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. Like, it's okay. We're
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
We're cool.
Catholics are cool.
Yeah.
That's what I told somebody for like the teens that I help at my parish. I was like, we're gonna make Catholics cool again. Like that's gonna be our little, instead of the MAGA hat, we're gonna make Catholics cool again.
I love that. We've got to do that because I'm like, people are like, you're over here, and then everyone else is right here. And I'm like, no, no, we're all one flock.
Uh-huh.
You can't just ditch the sheep you don't like. Okay.
I like that.
But like listening to your podcast, I'm like, okay, this might be where people are coming from. And these are also really basic ways that like you can see our side of it.
Yeah,
And
I
so
did a series, and I'm gonna redo it. I just need to like have some time to like sit and bring it back. But I did Catholic vocabulary class as part of a series, and I had several people say that that was one of the best things I've done. Like they loved, because even if you're just a Protestant visiting for first communion, you have no idea what's going on. So
and the rest of us are over here like, this is normal. I don't live without these words. What other word would we use?
yeah.
But something I find that Catholics don't know is the word testimony. So that's an interesting one. That seems to be more of a Protestant term than it is a Catholic term, even though it's both. So yes, I think that the stuff that you've been sharing it's been good for me, and I know it would be good for several people I know. So we're really grateful that you came to join us on our podcast, and
Well, thanks for
hopefully
having
we'll get to do more collabs. Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Anyway.
for sure. You guys have to come on mine.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll schedule a time.
Yeah.
All right.